Today, we're going to pull back the curtain on one of the most important safety checks in the entire world of medicine, one you've probably never even heard of. We're talking about the invisible guardians that stand between you and some potentially nasty stuff in the medicine you take. So think about it. The last time you took a pill, it looked perfect, right? Clean, simple, nothing to worry about. But what if there were microscopic stowaways hiding inside? And that, right there, is the scary part. We are talking about contaminants so tiny you'd never ever see them, but they can have a huge impact. They could make a drug less effective, cause it to break down on the shelf, or even worse, make it actively dangerous. So you have to wonder, how does this invisible threat even get in there in the first place? I mean, it's not like companies are adding impurities on purpose, right? Of course not. These things are more like sneaky invaders that can contaminate a drug at pretty much any point in its life. It can start right at the beginning with the raw materials themselves, or maybe it happens during the really complex manufacturing process. Heck, even just sitting on a shelf in a hot warehouse can cause the drug itself to start degrading and creating impurities. It's this constant battle against contamination at every single step of the way. Okay, so how do we possibly fight back against an invisible enemy like this? Well, we do it with a surprisingly simple and honestly kind of elegant solution, something called a limit test. This is our guardian at the gate. To put it simply, a limit test is a quality control check. But here's the absolute key. Its job isn't to hunt down and destroy every last molecule of an impurity, because let's be real, that's practically impossible. Instead, its one and only purpose is to make sure that whatever amount of impurity is in there, it's safely below a very strict, predefined limit. And this is what makes the whole idea so brilliant. A limit test doesn't ask a super complicated question like, okay, exactly how many micrograms of sulfate are in this sample? No. It asks a much simpler and, frankly, more important question. Is the amount of sulfate in here safely below the line? Yes or no? It's not about getting a precise number. It's a simple pass or fail. All right, so that's the theory. But to really get it, let's walk through a real-world example, the limit test for a pretty common impurity called sulfate. We're about to see how chemists can literally see safety with their own two eyes. You know, the process is actually pretty low-tech and clever. First, you take your drug sample and dissolve it in a solution. At the exact same time, you prepare what's called a standard solution. And this one has the absolute maximum amount of sulfate that's considered safe. Then, you add the same special chemical to both, and you just watch what happens. And this isn't done in just any old lab beaker. It's done in this special glassware called Nessler's cylinders. They're designed to be a perfect matched set, flat bottoms, totally uniform, all for one specific purpose, making it incredibly easy for a person to just look and compare the cloudiness of the two liquids side by side. So, what's making it cloudy? Well, it's a really simple chemical reaction. Any of those sulfate impurities floating around will react with the barium chloride you added. When they meet, they create these tiny solid particles of barium sulfate. And the more sulfate you started with, the more particles you get, and you guessed it, the cloudier the solution becomes. And here it is, the moment of truth. You hold both cylinders up, look through them, and compare. If the cloudiness in your drug sample is less than the cloudiness in that pre-approved standard solution, you have your answer. Your sample is safely below the limit. The drug passes. It's that simple visual check that decides if it's safe or not. So this one test is pretty cool, right? But how does it fit into the bigger picture? Well, these tests aren't just one-off experiments. When you put them all together, they form this complete safety net. They are the fundamental gatekeepers of quality for our medicines. And their impact is just huge. First and foremost, they protect patients from really toxic stuff, like lead and arsenic. They're also a non-negotiable hurdle. You know, regulatory bodies like the FDA require them before any drug can even think about hitting the market. For the company, they make sure every batch is consistent, and they even screen the raw materials before they're used, stopping impurities at the source. Now, to give you a sense of just how precise this is, take a look at this number. The safety limit for arsenic is often 1 part per million. 1. That is like finding a single drop of water in a small car's entire gas tank. That's the incredible level of purity we're talking about. For other heavy metals, the limit might be a little higher, say 10 or 20 parts per million. But we are still talking about unbelievably tiny amounts. These aren't just suggestions. They are hard, non-negotiable lines in the sand drawn to protect all of us.
This quote from Pharmadrift really just says it all, doesn't it? At their heart, limit tests are a promise. They're the way a manufacturer takes their commitment to safety and turns it from just words into a real, verifiable result.
But science never stands still. As clever as these classic visual tests are, they're constantly being improved upon. And in some cases, they're being replaced by technologies that are even more powerful. You can really see the evolution here. On one hand, you've got traditional tests. They're simple, they're cost-effective, but yeah, they do rely on the human eye, which can be a little subjective. On the other hand, you have modern techniques using high-tech machines. Now, they're more expensive, but they are incredibly sensitive and accurate, and they totally remove that chance of human error.
And this isn't just happening in one country. It's a global thing. Organizations like the International Council for Harmonization work to create a single, high standard for these tests everywhere. So a drug made in Europe or Asia has to meet the same tough purity rules as one made right here in the US.
So, in the end, limit tests are these unseen, unsung heroes of medicine working behind the scenes to protect us all. And it kind of leaves you with a final thought, doesn't it? What other invisible systems and guardians are out there working to ensure your safety in other parts of your life every single day?